Focus on Headline. And let's take a look at what major issues are making the headlines today on Focus on Headline. For this, joining us in the studio today, we have our reporters in Changana and Yoon Hae-jung. Guys, welcome back.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening to you guys. Back on yesterday, Monday, we had the South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff saying North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles. We did report on it. We also reported the fact that one of the launches possibly failing and even the missile debris falling inland within the country, which could be very concerning for any of the residents and quite an embarrassment for North Korea as well. We've been talking about how the month of June has not fared well for North Korea. A lot of embarrassing issues and their provocations. The North, however, according to their state media, saying that the country had successfully test-fired a new tactical ballistic missile capable of carrying a super large warhead. Who's right? Who's wrong? Hae-jung, you're going to start us off with the latest updates there.
Right. Pyongyang state-run media Korean Central News Agency reported Tuesday that its Monday's launch of the Hwasong-11 Ta 4.5 missile, capable of carrying a 4.5-ton class super-large warhead, was a success. According to the KCNA, the test fire was conducted with a missile tipped with a simulated heavy warhead to verify flight stability and hit accuracy at the maximum range of 500 kilometers and at a minimum range of 90 kilometers. It added that the country will conduct another test of the missile in July to verify flight characteristics and hit accuracy and explosion power of the super large warhead at the medium range of 250 kilometers. Now, what's notable is that this is the first time that North Korea said it has test-fired a tactical ballistic missile with a super large warhead. And a super large warhead is among a list of high-tech weapons that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un vowed to develop at a party congress back in 2021, including a spy military satellite and a solid fuel intercontinental ballistic missile. But North Korea's claim saying that their recent launch was a success was quickly disputed by South Korean officials and experts who speculate the North likely fabricated a successful test to conceal a botched launch. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff did say Monday that North Korea fired 2 ballistic missiles in a northeastern direction. They said one of them did fly about 600 kilometers before landing in the East Sea, but the other traversed only about 120 kilometers before its trail disappeared from the radar, raising the possibility of a failure. The JCS said the second missile appears to have flown abnormally during the early stage of its flight, and that if it exploded midair, its debris could have fallen inland.
Again, just because they fire these missiles don't mean that it always ends in success. There's been a number of cases where North Korea has failed in their missile tests. In fact, the report that came out from the UN where they said that Russia's been using North Korea-made ballistic missiles, I think they were saying that some 40 or so were used by Russia during their war in Ukraine. And it's not like all 40 of them actually work. They were saying that there was actually a large chunk of them that actually did not work amongst the shipment of 40 ballistic missiles that they used. And so I mean, again, they're still developing their weapons. They lack the technology compared to some of the economic powers. So a failure is not a surprise. However, given the fact that there were some embarrassing moments for North Korea, all happening mostly when North Korea is conducting these provocations to just send a strong message towards South Korea. They're trying to cover it up now. I mean, who are you going to believe, right? They don't really have a very good track record of telling the truth. But also Tuesday, the military resuming live-fire artillery drills near the border with North Korea. This for the first time in about 6 years since the suspension of the Inter-Korean Tension Reduction Pact signed back on September 19, 2018. during the previous liberal Moon Jae-in administration. Hannah, let's get more on this.
Sure. Now, according to military sources on Tuesday, the military conducted artillery firing in forward firing ranges in Gyeonggi and Gangwon provinces using K9 self-propelled howitzers, among others. And about 90 rounds of K9 self-propelled howitzers were fired in Gyeonggi province, and about 40 rounds of K105A1 wheeled self-propelled howitzers were fired in Gangwon province, totaling around 140 rounds. Now, these firing ranges are located within 5 kilometers south of the military demarcation line, which have been suspended since the September 19th, 2018 military agreement. Now, in the September 19th agreement, the two Koreas agreed to cease all artillery firing drills and regiment-level outdoor maneuver exercises within 5 kilometers of the MDL. However, the situation changed as North Korea has been engaging in complex provocations such as launching balloons filled with trash towards South Korea, GPS jamming attacks, and ballistic missile launches since late May this year. So the government decided to suspend the effect of all provisions of the September 19th agreement on the 4th of last month. Now, the military judged that frontline units should conduct firing drills in the actual operational areas under their jurisdiction rather than retreating to the rear for training as they did when the Inter-Korean military agreement was in effect. Now, the Marine Corps' regular K9 self-propelled howitzer live-fire drills in the northwestern islands were also resumed on the 26th of last month, and this type of training was also prohibited under the military agreement. And due to the prohibition of firing in the maritime buffer zone near the northern limit line under the September 19th military agreement, the Marine Corps units in the northwestern islands had been moving their K9 howitzers inland for firing drills. The military plans to continue large-scale joint outdoor maneuver exercises near the MDL, which had not been conducted due to the agreement, sending continuous warnings to North Korea, which has been increasing the level of complex provocations and military cooperation with Russia.
Look, I mean, South Korea had ended the September 19th military tension reduction pact. It's true. However, you can argue that years ago, a few years back, that it was North Korea that had actually kind of, I guess, unofficially ended the agreement, right? Once from the fallout of the Hanoi summit, North Korea kind of went rogue. And decided they were going to start. I mean, think about all the ballistic missiles that they test fired last year, right? A record number of them. And then, this year started off with all these cruise missiles. There was a number of other provocations that occurred. But South Korea still said, you know what, we're not going to officially end the military agreement, despite the fact that the current Yoon administration had really criticized this military agreement that was, again, signed during the former liberal Moon Jae-in administration, saying that it doesn't even work anymore. What's the point of having this? And in fact, they did say that they were going to be scrapping this, but it took the 1,000-plus trash-carrying balloons that ultimately officially ended the agreement in place. But it's ironic because, I mean, again, it was a lot of people are arguing that the whole balloon provocation was actually sparked by the South Korean activists, right? And so that was in response to that. And it took that for them to officially cancel and call off the military agreement there. Pyongyang state media reporting on Tuesday that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un expressed his satisfaction about the country's economic performances in the first half of the year, saying that the economic situations are clearly showing an upward trend. As I always say, you cannot go anywhere but up if you're down in the bottom. Haejong, you have more on this.
Right. A plenary meeting of North Korea's ruling Workers' Party took place for 4 days in Pyongyang until Monday, focusing on the country's economic situation. And the Korean Central News Agency reported Tuesday that during the meeting, Kim Jong-un assessed the regime's economy in the first half of this year as having improved compared to the same period last year, and said that crops across the regime's farmlands are also doing well. The party meeting garnered extra attention from South Korea and other regional powers as it followed summit talks between Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin in Pyongyang. where the two leaders signed a comprehensive strategic partnership treaty. The two leaders' signing of a new treaty on stronger military cooperation spawned speculation that the North may unveil follow-up measures to implement the deal at the party gathering. But there were no related reports on this issue, and Kim did not issue any message targeting South Korea or the U.S., nor did he reveal details about the country's push to advance its weapons arsenal. In the meantime, Pyongyang state media reported that North Korea discussed 5 agenda items at the latest party meeting, including the interim review of the implementation of state policies for the year and the issue of enforcing work discipline in key sectors. During the meeting, Kim also touted that the country will see the final stages of the 20 by 10 policy for regional development near the end of the year, which is North Korea's project to build modernized factories in 20 counties over the next 10 years to improve people's livelihoods. And touching on military, the KCNA said Kim clarified the direction of military and political activities by North Korea's all-armed forces without disclosing any further details. The North Korean leader also called for the Standing Committee of the Supreme People's Assembly to revise the country's constitution to enhance the prestige of the state, indicating that the North's parliament is expected to soon hold a key session. Meanwhile, North Korea also carried out a reshuffle of party officials at the party meeting. North Korea said it appointed Kim Jong-sun as a department director of the Worker Party Central Committee in what would be a rare move to name a woman in the post of a party department director.
I mean, Kim Jong-un is no stranger to putting women in high positions, right? I mean, you have, for one thing, his younger sister Kim Yo-jong holding a relatively high position. You still have Choi Sun-hee, who's, basically North Korea's version of a foreign minister. That's a very high position as well. But the fact that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un is mentioning that their economic situation has improved in the first half, what does that show? Does it mean that they're necessarily doing better agriculturally? Well, maybe, but it doesn't make a huge difference, to be honest with you. It could signal, once again, it's evidence that there is some sort of exchanges or trading going on between North Korea and Russia, because it is around towards the end of last year that there was speculation that there was some sort of give and take going on, right? Ammunitions and ballistic missiles to Russia in exchange for, they were saying, food supplies and maybe some, inflow of foreign currency. And so when you're having that constantly go in, and if the UN report is right and that Russia has been using not only ammunitions but ballistic missiles from North Korea, they're getting some sort of income from from Russia. And so, yeah, definitely, they're going to have a better economic situation. But to say that they're going to continue on with different policies to improve the livelihoods of the North Korean people, it's almost laughable. Tuesday, during his opening remarks at the cabinet meeting held at the presidential office in Yongsan, President Yoon Suk Yeol saying that if politics of conflicts and confrontations will repeat, we can't overcome the challenges ahead of us or move towards the future, adding that if reasonable dialogue and compromise disappear, that all the difficulties and sufferings will be passed on to the people. It is true, there's been a lot of rift and conflict with the rival parties, and it still goes on even today. Hannah, let's get the details of this.
Sure. Now, his remarks appear to be in reference to the current political situation where the Democratic Party is pushing for impeachment, leading to the voluntary resignation of Kim Hong-il, the chairman of the Korea Communications Commission, and attempting to force through the special probe into the death of Marine Corporal Che and the Broadcasting Act without bipartisan agreement. Additionally, with the establishment of the Ministry of Population and Strategic Planning and the revival of the Minister for Political Affairs, President Yoon expressed a desire to address livelihood issues through communication with the National Assembly. He emphasized that the goal of state affairs and politics is singular, which is to resolve the difficulties of the people's livelihoods and make the citizens happier. And he said that he believes the government and the National Assembly share this goal. Regarding the fire accident at Arirang, a lithium battery manufacturer in Hwasong, Gyeonggi Province on Tuesday, President Yoon stressed the need for a thorough investigation into the fire types and causes to establish more scientific safety measures. He further directed related ministries, including the Ministry of Interior and Safety, the Ministry of Employment and Labor, and the Ministry of Science and ICT, to collaborate on developing and distributing firefighting technology tailored to the characteristics of chemical substances and on technologies for detecting and preventing risks in advance to protect the lives and safety of the people. President Yoon also mentioned that South Korea ranked 20th in the 2024 National Competitiveness Evaluation by the International Institute for Management Development, the highest in its history, and achieved the largest trade surplus in the first half of the year since 2018. He also addressed the issue of low birth rates, expressing hope that overcoming low birth rates is not impossible if stronger policies are implemented and everyone unites their efforts. He called for the National Assembly's cooperation in passing the Government Organization Amendment Bill for the establishment of the Ministry of Population and Strategic Planning and the amendment to the Framework Act on Low Birth Rate and Aging Society.
I mean, a lot of things happening today. Speaking of rifts amongst the rival parties, the DP actually proposed a impeachment motion. We talked about Kim Hong-il, the KCC, well, now former chairman of KCC, but the main opposition Democratic Party actually proposed an impeachment motion on 4 prosecutors. Of them, I believe 3 of them are kind of involved with investigations into Lee Jae-myung, but talk about that maybe a bit later on. Let's talk about a shocking news. I actually, one of the things I try to do after work is I don't look at the news and, wake up at very early mornings and start reading then. Did not know this happened, but woke up to this news. 9 people have died, 4 people injured when a driver plowed into a group of pedestrians in downtown Seoul on Monday night. The driver is reportedly blaming sudden unintended acceleration for the accident. However, there are some witness statements coming out that given the what they examined, it does not seem like that's the case, as the car was able to brake after plowing through the group of people. Hae-chung, devastating news, shocking news. Tell us what exactly happened last night.
Right, the tragic accident took place at an intersection near Seoul City Hall at around 9:27 p.m. as a sedan driven by a 68-year-old man crashed into pedestrians who were waiting at a traffic signal. It created chaos in the area as Seoul City Hall is a typically crowded metropolitan street with many office buildings. The deadly car crash claimed 9 lives and injured 4 others. Of the 9 fatalities, 6 died at the scene, while 3 were transported to a hospital in cardiac arrest and later pronounced dead. Among the 4 injured, 1 returned home after treatment, while the others are not in critical condition. And the car driver and his wife were transported to a hospital as the driver complained of pain. And to give our listeners a picture of how the accident happened, according to the police, the vehicle was driving in the wrong direction of the road and collided with 2 vehicles before hitting people. The police apprehended the driver and said he was not under the influence of alcohol, according to an initial examination. In the meantime, the driver is blaming sudden unintended acceleration for the accident, but like SJ mentioned, some witnesses are saying otherwise. According to a witness, the driver applied the brakes at the end after hitting everyone, which can't be seen in case of a sudden acceleration because drivers usually deal with sudden acceleration by trying to hit a power pole or other objects. Another expert said that the driver didn't try to avoid the pedestrians as you would in a case of sudden acceleration, adding that the deadly accident could have simply been caused by a mistake or carelessness. Investigators are not fully ruling out the possibility of issues within the car car, considering the speed, reportedly 100 kilometers per hour. Police say they will swiftly carry out the investigation based on statements from the driver and witnesses, as well as security camera footage analysis. The police also added that as the driver was also hurt, they have yet to proceed with the investigation, but plan to conduct an inquiry when he becomes available to speak. And the latest accident comes amid questions over whether measures should be considered to help ensure safer driving among senior citizens.
Yeah, so I mean, look, he was 68 years old, right? 68 years old, but many experts are saying that's, I mean, yes, you're technically a senior citizen, but you're still young enough to be able to drive carefully. My dad's 68 and he drives fine. However, there's so much mystery into this, right? Like, why would you drive, especially when you're, making these turns at 100 kilometers per? You know how fast 100 kilometers per hour is? You know, the early mornings I come to work, there's no traffic. I could step on the pedal and I probably won't hit 100 kilometers. Actually, I try not to. I go under 100 kilometers. You really have to press on the pedal in order to hit 100 kilometers per hour. And also to drive at 100 kilometers per hour in downtown Seoul at 9:30 p.m., the speed is, I mean, it's way too fast, right? And to go the other way, and all these question marks here, and then witnesses saying that they saw the car brake after the car plowed through the pedestrians. It doesn't seem like sudden acceleration. Well, investigations are underway, so we'll hopefully get some answers to this. But again, condolences to the victims and the families. I mean, you never wake up on a Monday morning, go to work and expect something like this to happen to you or any of your family members, right? Shocking stuff here. Let's go back, talk about this ongoing kind of vacuum. Well, they're trying to avoid the vacuum, which is why Kim Hong-il actually resigned, right? If he does go through the impeachment motion and for President Yoon to, veto that and the whole process, they have to find someone who has to work as the interim, or, there's a vacuum going on. So instead, what he did was resign in hopes that there is no vacuum. However, you have to understand that since the dismissal of former chairman of KCC, Hang Sang-hyuk, last year, the KCC has changed its head 7 times over the past 13 months, which resulted in the prolonged instability and difficulty in finding path to normalization. The DP continues to use their impeachment motions, and this is really irking the top office and also the rival party in the ruling PPP. Hannah, let's get more on this.
Sure. Now, Kim Hong-il, who took office on December 29th last year, handled issues such as approving a change in the largest shareholder of YTN, but resigned before he could address the appointment of directors for public broadcasters, which led to his impeachment. Now, the KCC is now back to being led by acting chairman Lee Sang-in, and another personnel hearing is expected within 6 months. The concern is that this infinite loop could continue for a significant period of time. And additionally, there are issues like the reauthorization of broadcasters, including MBC, which has become a political hotspot. And besides broadcasting, the KCC also faces several telecommunications issues, such as imposing fines on Google and Apple for in-app payments and releasing investigation results on Naver's algorithms. However, continuous political battles over broadcasting have led to prolonged operational paralysis, prompting some to argue that the KCC structure itself needs an overhaul. Now, the KCC consists of a chairman at the ministerial level and 4 standing commissioners at the vice ministerial level in a 3-2-2 structure favoring the ruling party, making it susceptible to political influence. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission, which is the KCC's model, also exposed structural limitations last year when it was deadlocked at 2-2 for nearly 2 years. Furthermore, there is significant overlap in responsibilities between the KCC and other ministries, such as the Ministry of Science and ICT, regarding issues like broadcasting reauthorizations and telecommunication matters, adding to the rationale for organizational restructuring. Some argue that while maintaining the consensual approach to ensure media independence and fairness. More robust mechanisms should be implemented to shield the commission from political influence.
Well, I mean, that was just one of many things that actually happened at the National Assembly. Again, because now former chairman of KCC has resigned, the impeachment motion, it doesn't need to be passed, is basically what goes on. However, there was other impeachment motions, but also on Tuesday afternoon, the parliament beginning 3 days of questioning on government officials. The ruling and opposition parties expected to clash, obviously, over the special probe bill into the death of Marine Corporal Chae Soo-geun. From what I understand, recent reports coming out saying that the ruling PPP preparing to filibuster this action. Hae-jung, tell us what's going on right now at the parliament.
Right. Today, the ruling People Power Party said they would launch a filibuster, like you said, as the opposition seeks to pass a contentious bill mandating a special counsel investigation into the military's response to Marine Corporal Chae Soo-geun's death last year. Now, a filibuster involves lawmakers holding the floor for extended periods as a way to prevent parliamentary vote or delay a bill from being passed. The move comes as the main opposition Democratic Party has been pushing to pass the bill during this week's parliamentary plenary session despite objections from the PPP. The DP-led bill had initially passed through the previous assembly, but was voted down in a revote after President Yoon Suk Yeol vetoed it. The DP proposed it again after the new National Assembly came into office in late May. And today afternoon, the DP decided to put this bill to a vote at a plenary session right after today's National Assembly questioning session. National Assembly Speaker Woo Won-sik, a former member of the DP, is reportedly said to have agreed to this move. Now, this led to ruling PPP lawmakers holding a protest in front of the office of Speaker Woo Won-sik at the National Assembly. In the meantime, SJ did mention this early on, but the main opposition Democratic Party also proposed a motion today to impeach 4 prosecutors, including those involved in corruption investigations into former party leader Lee Jae-myung. The DP reported the motion to the plenary session of the National Assembly despite opposition from the ruling PPP and submitted it to the Legislation and Judiciary Committee. The prosecutors have been leading investigations into various corruption allegations against Lee, including a scandal involving underwear manufacturer Sangbangul Group's alleged illegal remittance to North Korea, as well as bribery and other charges from his tenure as the mayor of Seongnam from 2014 to 2018. And the DP has accused the prosecution of attempting to fabricate evidence to implicate Lee.
The ruling party and the top office very upset at this bill. Actually, also the prosecutor general saying his 2 cents on the matter as well. I think the prosecutor general Lee Won-suk, he came out earlier saying that basically what they're doing is the defendant in Lee Jae-myung, he is acting like the presiding judge, and basically the National Assembly, led by the main opposition Democratic Party, they're working as the judiciary. He even cited Article 101 of the Constitution, saying, the illegality of what they're trying to do is stripping the judicial power of the judiciary. I think the top office also came out saying that basically they're trying to investigate, do their own investigations into Lee Jae-myung. And so there's a lot of both controversies and again a lot of conflict between the two parties again, and we expected this to happen, right? Not to mention, I believe there's the issue over the National Assembly petition right now for the impeachment of President Yoon, which has also irked the top office. And the top office basically said you can't impeach someone that hasn't violated any law right now, and so. Even that, we're what, like a month into the new? We haven't even had the opening ceremony for the 22nd National Assembly. This is already happening right now. Let's talk economics this time. The consumer prices continuing a relatively stable trend, recording the 2% level for the 3rd consecutive month. However, the prices of fruits, particularly, again, apples and pears, continue to soar. Prices of some items such as petroleum products and price of dining out also showing some instability as well. Hannah, let's get the latest figures on this.
Sure. Now, according to the June Consumer Price Index data released by Statistics Korea on Tuesday, the CPI for last month was 113.84, up 2.4% from the same month last year. Now, this is the lowest inflation rate in 11 months since July last year. The consumer price inflation rate increased from 2.8% in January this year to 3.1% in February and March, then dropped back to the 2% range starting from April. And by item, agricultural, livestock, and fisheries products rose 6.5% from a year earlier, while fisheries and livestock products remained stable. Agricultural products increased by 13.3%. Fruit prices remained high last month, with seaweed prices rising by 28.6%, which is the highest increase since December 1987. Statistics Korea explained that this was due to the base effect of low international oil prices last year. And dining out prices increased by 3% from last year due to rising raw material and labor cost. In terms of contribution, agricultural products raised the inflation rate by 0.49 percentage points, while personal service prices, including dining out, contributed 0.93 percentage points to inflation. And the contribution of petroleum products was 0.16 percentage points. Fortunately, the core inflation indices, which show the underlying trend of prices, slowed to the low 2% range. The Statistics Korea noted that uncertainties such as fluctuations in international oil prices, partial reinstatement of fuel taxes, and changes in agricultural product prices due to weather conditions remain.
Let's move on here. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo ordering all-out efforts on Tuesday to prevent damage from torrential downpours this week. It has begun heavy downpours, even in the Seoul capital, Seoul, and we're seeing that in other regions as well. And we're expecting at least a week-long just a week-long straight of rain, and we've seen how devastating these torrential rains can be. If you saw what happened last year and the year before that. Haejung, tell us how much rain we're supposed to be expecting.
Right. Heavy rain soaked much of the nation Tuesday, with heavy rain advisories issued across the greater Seoul area and the southern regions, as well as Gangwon province. Weather authorities say between 80 to 120 millimeters of rain will hit the central and southern parts of Korea until tomorrow. Overnight, South Jeolla province and South Gyeongsang province, as well as Jeju-do Island, could see up to 30 millimeters of rain per hour, but the rain is mostly expected to stop tomorrow morning. And starting Thursday afternoon, the rain is forecasted to return as the stationary front moves north. And as heavy rain pounded the country, Prime Minister Han Duck-soo ordered a thorough inspection of evacuation and safety measures for residents in vulnerable areas to landslides and flooding. He ordered officials to take preemptive measures in controlling access and evacuation in areas at risk of flooding. Furthermore, Prime Minister Han ordered government officials, police, and firefighters to maintain around-the-clock emergency system in areas where torrential rain is expected. He also urged local governments to ensure control of riversides and agricultural waterways and to help the elderly and disabled evacuate to safe areas in advance. The Prime Minister also ordered sending out more frequent emergency messages on rain and response instructions repeatedly, so we may get a lot of these emergency alarms.
Yeah, and one of the things that we even had our expert, our meteorologist, resident meteorologist on our program say that the only thing we can do is take early precautions, prepare for these. It happens. Monsoon season is something that happens every year. Unfortunately, some years it's worse than the other. We've seen just volatile weather conditions over the past few years now, and they're expecting another one this year as well. So we got to start preparing. Now, one of the things I saw earlier today in the streets was, the big problems with when there was flooding at Gangnam. You guys remember when there was Gangnam, and then also Sadang. I barely missed that one, by the way. A lot had to do with the fact that, the drains were clogged with like
trash.
cigarette butts and like trash. I saw some of the sanitation people unclog the drains starting today, making sure that it doesn't happen again. So again, early precautions there. I'm going to round things out here with some news overseas. We're going to go to France this time. The anticipated victory of the far-right party, the National Party, or RN for short, the early general elections is sending shockwaves not only through French domestic politics, but also across the political and diplomatic and economic landscape of Europe. Hannah, let's get more on the French parliamentary elections.
Yes, sure. Now, if the far-right RN, which prioritizes nationalism, takes part in the governance of France as the leading party and attempts to reorganize the system, it could fundamentally disrupt the existing order centered around the EU, a political and economic community advocating for integration. Now, this disruption could hinder support for Ukraine in the war, immigration policies, environmental issues, and more, potentially accelerating divisions within the Western Bloc. And if RN secures the leading party position through the second round of voting on July 7th, following the first round on June 30th, France would see its fourth cohabitation government in 27 years. Unlike President Macron, who strongly supports the EU and European integration, RN is skeptical of the EU and prioritizes national interest. The British newspaper The Guardian recently reported that the EU is preparing for the worst-case scenario of a EU-skeptical France. The shift of France, one of the twin pillars of the EU alongside Germany, to a skeptical stance on European integration would be a significant blow to the EU, severely constraining its policy-making capabilities. Jordan Bardella, the RN leader and a potential prime minister candidate, recently declared that if his party joins the government, it would mark the return of a France that defends its own interest, stating that they are ready to negotiate for exceptions to various EU regulations for France. RN advocates for more powers to be returned to individual nations and has expressed a desire to stop providing some of France's financial contributions to the EU. And according to The Guardian, RN wants to enact laws prioritizing French businesses and agriculture, which would violate EU single market rules. RN also seeks to renegotiate EU free trade agreements that it believes do not respect France and opposes further EU expansion. As such, the potential victory of RN could lead to major disruptions in EU-related decision-making in a divided political landscape. And while President Macron would still be responsible for foreign policy as head of state, individual ministers play crucial roles in formulating policies on the environment, immigration, and other EU laws. So the French Parliament also controls the national budget, raising concerns that RN's influence could reduce France's support for Ukraine.
Yeah, the thing is, I think the RN initially, they were talking about what's being dubbed a Frexit, right? The French version of the Brexit. That's apparently not part of their plans anymore. And I don't think they're planning to leave the EU like the British did. However, yeah, it does kind of still create this kind of rift with the European zone. All right, guys, thank you very much for your reports. Stay safe, stay dry, and we'll see you guys again.
Thank you.
You can listen to Korea Now with me, SJ Lee, by downloading the Arirang Radio application or tune in online by visiting www.arirangradio.com. So make sure you tune in Mondays through Fridays, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. Korea time.